How do the Red Sox and Blue Jays stack up going into their four-game series? We speak about this on a Locked On Blue Jays, Locked On Red Sox crossover.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Jake Ignaszewski. In today's episode, we have a crossover with Locked On Blue Jays to break down and preview the four-game series between each team. We go through the pitching matchups. We look at a potential rivalry brewing between Alek Manoah and Alex Verdugo, and much, much more. Let's get into my conversation with Locked On Blue Jays.
Okay, there's the record. Let's get that up. All right. Oh, sorry. Let me get that better set up for me. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, joined by Jake Iggy, Locked On Red Sox. Crossover episode. These are always enjoyable to do. Gives each fan base a glimpse of what to look for and what to expect from their opponents in that upcoming series. And for a lot of these crossover episodes, it's almost want to say a one and done, because it's a team that you're playing that 3-game series, maybe that 4-game series, and then you see them maybe again, or you'll see them way later in the second half. This is Blue Jays Red Sox. This is different. This is AL East rivals, and dare I say, and I think Jake's going to touch on this, dare I say, an actual real rivalry brewing between these two teams. But Jake, first and foremost, I want to say hello to you. Want to thank you for the work you're doing on Locked On Red Sox. Anyone out there growing the game of baseball, hey, 2 thumbs up for me, right? And I certainly want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. Let's just start real quick, Jake, with how's everything on your end?
I think when you really look at the Red Sox in their April so far, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. A lot of injuries, a lot of inconsistency. But going into the season, the Red Sox will slide into, that 4th place sort of spot in the AL East. Right now, they're tied with the Yankees. Definitely didn't expect that. Luckily, when you look on the standings on MLB.com or wherever you look, the Red Sox are above the Yankees.
Yeah,
that makes me as a Red Sox fan happier than if they were below them. So, even though they have tied for the same exact record, like the Red Sox are essentially not in last place. The Yankees are, however you want to look at it. But I think, going into, this month of May, the Sox are getting a lot of guys who were on injury coming back. The rotation is a little bit of a musical chairs game right now. There's a lot of moving parts. But I think, especially with how the schedule is this season, I think it favors the Red Sox in terms of not playing the AL East teams as often, because we saw last year they struggled so much being able to tack on the W's against some of the AL East teams.
Yeah, no, that's the one thing. You talk about a Yankees-Blue Jays rivalry. Well, not when it comes to hatred of the New York Yankees. That's the old that handshake emoji, right? There's Yankees and Red Sox and Blue Jay fans with the handshake. Yep. And you're right, Jake. Hey, score one for alphabetical order, right? Because it's glorious to look and see the Yankees in last place right now. It's glorious to see that. So, way to start us off on a bang there, Jake. I like that. I love that. Absolutely love that. Jake, let's get into, we're going to get into the series specifics in a moment here, but I always like to start with sort of big picture-wise. Again, letting each fan base know what's the other fan base, what kind of team is coming into town here, or is my team about to take on? When I think of the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays, I truly, truly believe, and this isn't just me, Jake, with my Blue Jay fan hat on, I truly believe they're one of a small amount of teams. A lot of teams have playoff aspirations. I think the Blue Jays are one of the small amount of teams who have very legitimate World Series or bust aspirations. I would think anything short of even making it to the World Series this season would be falling well short, would not be a great season for the Toronto Blue Jays. On your end, Jake, because all due respect to you and your Red Sox, I can't imagine that's the same in Red Sox. And I can't imagine World Series or bust in 2023 is on your radar, Jake. But what does a successful 2023 look like for you, for the Boston Red Sox?
So I wanted to touch on real quick with like what you said about the Blue Jays. I completely agree. The young core that they have and their ability to be able to build a very sustainable rotation thus far. We're going to get more into it. Barrios not giving you what you expected him to after getting traded over from Minnesota a few years ago, and especially the amount of money that they gave him. But I think especially from what we've seen from a lot of the prospects coming up, obviously, Vladdy, Bichette, the rest of the core that the team has. I think they're one of the most scary offensive teams that there is in the league. And especially as they continue to get more developed and more comfortable in the league, a lot of people forget, isn't Vladdy only like 23 right now? Like it's kind of crazy how young he actually is and how he's just kind of getting started. But, touching on what would be a successful season in my eyes for the Boston Red Sox, it's a landscape of bright future. What are these different pieces going to give to you, and what guys are you going to keep to essentially be the core of this next Red Sox World Series team? Last year, going into the 2023 offseason, there was so many question marks, there was so many free agents, and now it's sort of a point where now let's give the prospects like Tristan Casas, Brian Bayo, Jaron Duran an opportunity to show that they can have a spot on this future roster of the Boston Red Sox. And you're already starting to see it in the rotation. Tanner Houck getting more of an opportunity in that spot. Garrett Whitlock as well. And then, you also see what you have in Chris Sale coming back, only making 12 starts over the last 3 seasons or so. So I think, even though a lot of Red Sox fans don't want to classify this season as a bridge year, it's the reality of the situation. If the team is 500, that is better than a losing record in my mind. I see this team, winning a max 85 games. If they win 90, that's a successful season. If they figure out a way to sneak into the wild card, that's a successful season. But at this point, after 1 month, it's sort of what you expected out of the Boston Red Sox thus far.
Jake, I do want to get into today's pitching matchup. You mentioned how he's up against Yusei. We'll get into today's specific pitching matchup in a moment here. But you brought up something. You brought up Tristan Casas. Now, somebody Jake, is sitting, even as a Blue Jay fan, is sitting patiently waiting because somebody has him as their first baseman on their fantasy team. So somebody Jake, is sitting here extremely underwhelmed so far. I thought having this guy, that swing, that bat at Fenway and the road ballparks in the AL East, I thought this was going to be a press to print your own money, Jake. I thought this guy was a superstar walking in the door. Now, he just walked in the door, right? He just I do get it, but there's no way you can be happy with what you've seen so far, Jake. What is going on with Tristan Casas, and what do you see from him going forward?
That was bold for you to make him your first baseman, if I'm being honest with you, because I expected him to sort of struggle to start off. I believe his average in his small stint last season was around 230. And, he is an on-base first type of hitter. He's very patient at the plate. He's not, your general first baseman who goes up there is going to hit a low average and hit 40 bombs. He's going to give you around 25 to 20 bombs, and, he'll probably hit, 270, 300 at his best. And obviously he's not showing that right now. And I think it sort of just goes to what most rookies struggle with getting into the league, understanding, major league competition type of pitching and being able to get comfortable in this new sort of role of being a major league professional baseball player. You're not in AAA anymore. You're not in Portland or Worcester anymore. And, from everything that I've seen from Tristan Casas, I had the opportunity to speak with him twice last year. He's the most confident prospect I've ever seen. And, Ian Brown said he's the most confident Red Sox prospect that he's seen come up through the system since Dustin Pedroia. And that's telling you something. And so, the confidence is definitely there. The ability to be himself, the mental aspect, which a lot of guys have to overcome. A guy like Jaron Duran really had to overcome when he first came up for the Red Sox.
Cool. Yep.
And so I think with Casas, it's just a waiting game for him just to get into a groove. We're already starting to see it with Christian Arroyo thus far, really struggled to begin the season for the Red Sox. Now he's hitting over 500 over the last 7 or 8 games. So guys just need to get into a groove. And I think, this isn't super uncharacteristic for a rookie like Casas, but you definitely expected more.
Well, Jake, I mean, if I could ask a personal favor, because I wouldn't mind the groove, right? I need him to, but if that groove could happen as of Friday, that would be appreciated. Okay.
I hope that you are enjoying my conversation with Craig of Locked On Blue Jays, but I just want to take a second to talk to you about Gametime. So Whether you're looking for last-minute tickets for games, Red Sox games specifically, or concerts, different events, Gametime is the best spot to buy your tickets, not only whenever you want to, but also last minute as well. They have killer deals, best price guaranteed, so you can stop stressing over high price tickets and you can wait till the last minute and get really cheap seats and flash deals over on Gametime. The also best part about this app is that they give you a view from your seats. A lot of times when you get Fenway Park tickets, there's obstructed views. You don't really know exactly what seat you're going to get and the view that you're going to be paying for. Gametime gives you ability to do that. Also, you don't have to dig through your email for the tickets. They send it directly to your email to make it super easy and make the ticket buying process as stressless as possible. So snag your tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem the code Locked On MLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And I also want to talk to you about Sorare. So this is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 major league teams. It's unlike any other fantasy baseball platform because you truly own your fantasy experience by buying, collecting, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or loss, you still own your cards and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and assessing new level competitions and rewards. Another great part about Sorare is that they're partnering with MLB All-Stars Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez to serve as brand ambassadors. So they'll be featured on multiple MLB events and with the community throughout the season. So head over to sorare.com/locked-on. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/locked-on to start playing today. Now let's get back into my conversation with Craig of Locked On Blue Jays.
Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, here with Jake Iggy from Locked On Red Sox. Tonight's matchup, you say Kikuchi, Tanner Houck. You say 4-0 for the Blue Jays. ERA sitting right at 3. The Jays have won all 5 of his starts. His fastball continues to be a little bit hit or miss. I would say that the fastball continues to be a bit of an issue. He's throwing a different off-speed pitch this season. Kevin Gausman characterized it as a curve sliderish pitch. So even a veteran like Kevin Gausman can't really pinpoint what it is. That's the sort of movement it has. It's doing well for him. You say he's always been a guy that's going to get a strikeout, per inning pitch in his career. He's always been a strikeout guy. But this season, the walks are way down. And what's the home runs are still there, Jake. But the thing is, with you say what we've seen in the past, it's always a 2 or a 3-run home run. So it's always a crooked number on one pitch going on the board for the opposition. This season, Kikuchi's been excellent at limiting the damage. Most of the home runs have been solo home runs. And when you look at him against this specific Red Sox lineup, so some notable Red Sox hitters, Justin Turner, 0 for 5 career versus Kikuchi. Arroyo, you mentioned Arroyo, 0 for 5 against Kikuchi. You mentioned Devers earlier, 0 for 7 against Kikuchi. So that's 0 for 17 with 8 strikeouts for those 3 prominent Red Sox hitters. Now, Alex Verdugo, worth mentioning. I know he's a 4-letter word around my parts in Blue Jay land. I know, there's a rivalry, I know. But he's hit Kikuchi very well. And the Boston Red Sox are one of, if not the best, at least one of the best teams so far this season against lefties. Your Red Sox have faced a lefty 11 times so far this season. You've won 7 of those games. I mean, that's going to work. We'll get to the Tanner Houck aspect in a moment here, but what are you looking for out of Kikuchi tonight, Jake? Who's a Red Sox batter that you're saying, Craig, I hear you, and Kikuchi's been better than before, I get it, but here's the guy to be careful with tonight in the Red Sox lineup against Kikuchi?
So when I see and hear what you're saying with Kikuchi so far this season, it's intriguing because I think what I've seen from him when he was with Seattle, during his first season with the Blue Jays, sort of reminds me of a guy like Nick Pivetta, who he's going to go out there and probably let up like 2 to 3 runs every start, or he'll shove. And it's sort of on or off, a little bit of some inconsistency. And I feel like with Kikuchi, at least looking at it last year, you knew what you had with him each and every single start. Like, it wasn't going to surprise you out of nowhere if, he allowed 2 or 3 runs. Same with Nick Pivetta as well. Obviously, we'll get to him in the next game. But in terms of what you said about what hitters to look out for, Alex Verdugo. He's been on a roll so far this season. He has continuously found ways to come up clutch, has the most, walk-offs for the Red Sox over the last 4 years or so. Already has 2 so far this season. And, as you said, there's already a rivalry brewing between Verdugo and the Blue Jays. And I think he fuels off of that. And, I think he's going to use it to his advantage throughout the series.
Correct me here, Nick. I know he's definitely been your best hitter, Verdugo. No doubt about that. I mean, you can not like a player, right, Nick? But there's guys, people like us. I mean, we still pride ourselves on calling it the way we see it, right? I don't like Alex Verdugo, but what's been in front of me in my face, he's having a very good season. I think he's your only hitter north of 300. Am I right about that, Nick?
I believe so.
Yeah. So no, he's off to a very good start. Yes. Tanner Houck is a guy that I really like. You probably don't know anyone, Jake, in a different fan base that is as big a fan of Tanner Houck as I think he's awesome. Really? I don't understand. Every single game I feel like I watch, I feel like he's awesome. And all of a sudden in the 4th or the 5th inning, he's out of the, I don't know why he never has, the Red Sox never give him any sort of longevity. I mean, I'm sure they know what they're doing with that, but 3-1 on the season. Now, when I look at the surface, his ERA is 4.5. That does not seem Tanner Houck to me seems like a walking 3s ERA. Like his ERA should be in the 3s, period. So I'm very surprised to see that. Last time out against Baltimore was a decent start, I guess, but I have to say it was his worst start of the season and the only start of the season that the Red Sox lost. George Springer is a matchup that I'm really looking at in this game Houck has owned George Springer. Now, Bo and Vlad have hit him well. This is his 5th game versus the Blue Jays. And what I find interesting, and maybe part of why I like this guy so much, Jake, is he's never given up a home run to the Blue Jays. And this season, I don't even think he's given up a home run to righties. I'm a big fan of this guy. I like his mix. I like his pitch mix. I'm a big fan of his. I'm concerned. I'm concerned, Jake. And a lot of Blue Jay fans will be sitting there saying, Craig, 4.5 ERA, our batters mash at Fenway Park. Hey, no need to be concerned. But I'll tell you, I am. What are you looking for tonight in Tanner Houck?
So I think your listeners might laugh at this a little bit. You're a little bit more positive about him than I am. Okay. Funny enough, I actually said at the beginning of the season, he's not a starting pitcher. In my mind, he hasn't been able to give you the amount of innings to show that he is a viable and productive starting pitcher. A lot of the times when he gets the second time around the order, guys start to mash off of him. Guys start to, read what he's, thrown to them in the up at bat before. And so when you really look at it, going into the season, led, spring training is obviously spring training, but he led the majors in home runs allowed in spring training. He allowed, I believe, over 20 earned runs in 4 starts during spring training. And so in my mind, those stats speak for itself. Obviously, once you get across, the white lines into regular season play, it's a whole different ball game. And he's been the best starter in the rotation for the Red Sox thus far in the regular season. And, I gave him his flowers last week after, he gave the Red Sox consistent, quality starts and looked a lot better than he, at least did last year as a starter. But, he's a guy who, I see him a lot more effective out of the bullpen when he was, a multi-inning reliever last year, as well as a closer. He was locked down. And, the one thing that I don't like that the Red Sox have done specifically with Houck is putting him back and forth and, just filling him in, when they do need rotation help like they did at the beginning of this season. But when you think about it to last season, he got kicked out of the rotation after he couldn't travel to Toronto due to vaccine issues. And that's when Garrett Whitlock got his opportunity in the rotation and Houck was put into the bullpen. And I think when you look at him this season against the Blue Jays, he's coming off of that rough start, but, you semi know what you're going to get from him as well. He's similar to Kikuchi where, he'll probably allow 1 to 3 runs each and every single start. And, he's going to give you, consistent control, and he's also going to get ground ball outs. That's one thing that he's done a lot better this season compared to last season in doing. And his last start against the Blue Jays, 5 innings pitched, allowed 2 earned runs, 3 strikeouts at the beginning of last season. So I'm excited to see what he brings you, but I think that this is going to be a very close game for Game 2. And, one thing that I haven't mentioned yet, the Red Sox and Blue Jays are tied right now in seventh in the MLB with 109 weighted runs created plus. So this is going to be a very offensive type of series.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why I love these episodes. So first of all, you talk about the offensive series. I touched on that a lot in the Monday episode. I mean, there is a laundry list of Toronto Blue Jays who bang at Fenway Park. I know you're sitting there saying, Jake, hey, join the list. A lot of people bang at Fenway. I know, but the Blue Jays are certainly amongst them. And I say, this is why I say I love doing these crossover episodes. I tell you, I'm a Tanner Houck believer and a fan, and I'm always sitting there saying, why don't the Red Sox give him more of a rope? Then we get an expert like you on saying, well, Craig, hey, that's not on the Red Sox. That's actually on Tanner Houck. The second and third time through, he's actually been a nightmare. So great insight there, Nick.
Jake, one other thing that I want to mention too is what's the first thing that I said to you right when we got on? I said I saw the Encarnacion jersey behind you, and I said he mashed at Fenway Park. He would at least hit 2 to 3 home runs every single time he went there.
The parrot was always in his travel ensemble when he came to Fenway. You're right.
I didn't know that's why he did that. I always do remember him going like that when he was right around. That's funny. I hope that you are enjoying my conversation with Craig of Locked On Blue Jays, but I just want to take a second to talk to you about BetterHelp. So I don't know about you, but we talked about mental health a lot on this podcast and being able to go through that self-discovery process to make yourself 1% better each and every single day. And I don't know about you and your experience with therapy, but therapy has been an instrumental part about me learning about who I authentically am and figuring out why I react to certain situations and really being able to give me an outlet outside of just friends or family to be able to get opinions on different situations in life and how to better myself each and every single day. And therapy is something that can be stressful to not only find a therapist, but also be able to have it fit within your schedule. And with BetterHelp, they find flexible and suited appointments to your schedule, and it's designed entirely online. So you don't have to worry about going into an office or finding a therapist or a person that is close to where you live. And you just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime, no additional charge. So find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Now let's get back into my conversation with Craig of Locked On Blue Jays.
Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays here with Jake Iggy, Locked On Red Sox. We are into Wednesday's Blue Jays Red Sox game. We've got a bit of a game here. We've got a bit of a doozy here. And this isn't one that's just on paper. We're talking because rivalries are brewing between these two teams. Alek Manoah versus Nick Pivetta. Jake, this is already a game that I would have circled, highlighted. This is already one that I would think could have some great drama because Nick Pivetta is some CanCon. He's Canadian content, right? He's one of our own. Alek Manoah is a superstar and a hero in this country already. So I think the storylines would write themselves, period. But especially now, we'll get into Manoah versus Verdugo in just a moment here. But just to set the stage, Alek Manoah, 1-1 on the season, ERA just under 5. His best starts this season have been where he's grinded out the starts. He's had a couple of those. He's not had anything close to his 2022 A game on display just yet. Overall for Manoah, this will be his third start at Fenway. His first two, he pitched very, very well. The big difference this season with Alek Manoah has been the location, and in particular his effect of all his pitches, and in particular his effectiveness against righties. I want to say he hit, I think it was 156. I think righties hit 156 against Manoah last season. It's either 156 or 159. I mean, either way, Jake, complete domination, right? This season, opponents are hitting a full 100 points higher than that. And you talk about the Alex Verdugo aspect of things. Alex Verdugo has, and Blue Jay fans are going to get upset with me here, but you have to call it the way we see it. Alex Verdugo has owned Alek Manoah 7 for 16, 2 doubles and a home run. Now, the good news is the rest of the Red Sox combined 6 for 42. Manoah has dominated the rest of the Red Sox. But again, if we're having an open, honest conversation, Jake, that was a lot of 2021 and 2022 when Manoah had his A stuff. We haven't seen that on display yet in 2023. So we'll get to Nick Pivetta, some CanCon, right? So it's always easy to cheer for Nick Pivetta, even though he's a Red Sox still, but we'll get to that aspect in a moment here. But when you think Alek Manoah tonight, what are you concerned about? What are you looking for? And then when you think Alek Manoah and Alex Verdugo, what are your thoughts on that?
So I bet you guys love to root for Nick Pivetta because you smack all over him. That's why. But
It actually is true. But okay,
we'll get to that in a sec. But Alek Manoah and Alex Verdugo, I think this is a matchup that everybody's excited to see. Not only between our two fan bases, but just in the MLB. And I think you're going to see some stare downs. You're going to see some yapping at each other, and that's what we love. That's what we love as fans. It brings more of the intensity to the watching experience, and I feel like I would love to see whether it's Verdugo hitting a home run off of Manoah and he flips his bat and he's yapping at him while he's walking to first base, or Manoah strikes out Verdugo and they're yapping at each other while they're both walking off the field. Either one of those, that would be primetime TV. And I think one thing that, you think about for Blue Jays fans who are like, who is this Alex Verdugo guy talking crap to Alek Manoah when he hasn't even done anything since he cracked into Boston, getting traded for a guy who was classified as one of the greatest Red Sox prospects to ever break through the system, and somebody who's one of top 5 players, especially when he got traded over to the Los Angeles Dodgers and Mookie Betts. But for Verdugo, he has the stats to back up his talk this year. And I think with him, he's one of the only outspoken guys on this Red Sox team. I guess you could also say maybe Kike Hernandez. But you don't see a lot of other guys like go out into the media and call people out. And I think, he wouldn't have brought up this aspect of emotion that he didn't like if it wasn't something that, he's been keeping in for a little bit. He brought up how Manoah was yapping at Bobby Delbeck and Frenchie Cordero and telling them to sit their butts down instead, just walking back to the dugout. And, I think you could bring it up with bat flips for hitters as well. Like there's 2 different ways of showing emotion in sports. And that's essentially what the episode was on in Rob Bradford's Baseball Isn't Boring episode when he had Alex Verdugo on. And so I think with that aspect, it just adds even more fuel to the fire to why you should be excited about this series. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch to see what both players bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, you can't turn the TV on, even if it's 10-2. You can't turn the TV on. No lead is safe at Fenway Park, but under any circumstances, right? When these two get together, no matter what's happening in the game, it's its own subplot, right? It's must see. I'm sure they'll face each other at least twice, hopefully a third time as well. Yeah, it should be very entertaining. Jake, I'm right there with you. Now, you mentioned Nick Pivetta, and you mentioned how the Jays have done against them. It's what's really interesting to me is the sort of ups and downs, the feast or famine. So you have the top of the lineup, you have Springer and Bo, absolutely owned Nick Pivetta. Now the next 2 batters, Vlad and Chapman, advantage Pivetta. Pivetta's done very well against both of them. You're probably going to see Witt and Kirk in the 5 and 6. Now we're back to advantage Blue Jays. They've hammered Pivetta. And I do think that the Blue Jays will find a way to get Kevin Biggio in the game today as he's 5 for 14 with a double and 2 home runs in his career against Nick Pivetta. Excuse me. When I've seen Pivetta this season, it really seems like there's a lot more fly balls than I'm used to seeing. I'll say that. And I really see his, I'm hoping the Blue Jays really pick on that slider. Feels like his slider is being dealt with. What are you looking for tonight in Nick Pivetta? What does he have to do to be successful in this game tonight, in this emotion-packed game tonight?
He's got to keep the ball on the ground. I think, his ineffectiveness to keep balls at least out of play or in terms of, getting people on base. He doesn't walk a lot of people, but he does allow a lot of hits. And that usually stacks up to, adding runs on the board as well. There's a lot of times where, with Nick Pivetta, he reminds me a lot of an Eduardo Rodriguez when he was on the Red Sox. I always make that comparison because he'll go out there and give you a game where it's a 2-hitter. He'll strike out 8, and then the next game he'll allow 5. And then it's a back and forth just like that. Or sometimes he'll just have a stretch of 5 stars in a row where, he blows up the game, allows, 3 to 5 runs or so. But he's right now a guy, this is a storyline to keep an eye on. He's a guy who's fighting for a roster spot or a rotation spot. Oh. And, I think especially from what, Red Sox fans have heard from him when the, murmurs of him going to the bullpen have come up. He's been very snappy to media when that gets brought up.
Oh, wow.
And he's also been very sort of beating his fist down on the table of, I am going to be in the rotation. Just sort of, he has no No willingness, it seems like, to want to go into the bullpen or allow his rotation spot, even though he's been with the team for 3 years now and has had practically identical ERAs all throughout those last 3 years with absolutely barely any improvement whatsoever. And so I think that's a component to look towards because, even though Garrett Whitlock is probably going to be out for, 2 turns through the rotation, James Paxton's on his way up. And, once Paxton comes up, you got to make a decision. Are you going to keep Houck in the bullpen or are you going to keep Nick Pivetta in the bullpen? And so that's a really interesting storyline to look at. And so I think he's going to be pitching with a lot more motivation in this series, especially going against AL East teams. He got killed against AL East teams all throughout last season. And, the figure that, I was referring to when I said, the Blue Jays mash him, he had a 5.95 ERA against the Blue Jays in 4 starts last year. And, that's just one thing that it's really tough to swallow. And it's really kind of crazy because, like I said, AL East killed him last year, but every other team that he faced last year, he did relatively all right. But, with Nick Pivetta going to be coming out with a different vengeance this game because he's got to show that he deserves to stay in the rotation.
How about Jake? How about you laying out for us that Nick Pivetta bucking the trend of your typical polite, nice Canadian? You're telling me that you're hearing a lot of actual downright pushback from him in the media. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit. And he's said that he wants to stay in that rotation, and he's not super open to going into the bullpen. And he did have a bullpen role in the 2021 playoffs and was very effective in that role. And I think for him, you're not paying him a lot of money, and he's in arbitration for, I believe, 2 more seasons with the Red Sox. And so it's sort of a situation, kind of like I spoke about when you asked me about what the landscape of this team is right now. You got to figure out if Nick Pivetta is a future part of your franchise, and if you're going to trade him or if you're going to put him as a bullpen piece. And so I think, we could potentially see that, if they want to see what do we have in Nick Pivetta as a multi-inning reliever, time will come in the next few weeks. I hope that you did enjoy this crossover with Locked On Blue Jays and got a little bit of insight and some excitement going into this Red Sox Blue Jays series. And I kind of want to hear your thoughts, whether it's in the comments on YouTube or over on Twitter. Do the Red Sox and Blue Jays have a rivalry? That's one thing that throughout this conversation, I just kept on thinking about because, the Red Sox and Yankees, they obviously have their long story rivalry. The Rays and Red Sox kind of have a little bit of bad blood. But I mean, now that the Sox and Blue Jays are playing each other not only a lot more often, but it's a lot more competitive than it usually is, I think that we could see a rivalry brewing, not only with what Manoah and Verdugo had fueled up earlier this season, but very excited to see how this whole series plays out. But I greatly appreciate you making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now, for my everydayers, tomorrow on the show, Lauren is going to officially be back. We're going to be breaking down what happened in Game 1 of the Blue Jays series, but we're going to continue to keep you posted about everything that is happening regarding the Boston Red Sox. So make sure to subscribe over on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to hear episodes 5 days a week. We also have tons of different guests on. If you look all throughout last week, we had guests from, Red Sox Twitter. We have players on as well. So if you have not yet, make sure to subscribe. Also follow us over there on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. Follow myself. It's at Jake Iggy. And also Lauren. It's 3 Laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But as always, we greatly appreciate everybody tuning in to Locked On Red Sox podcast. We hope that everybody has a great rest of your day. And we'll end this episode how we always end it. Keep the faith, stay positive, and let's go Sox. Peace.